Okay, so welcome to our developing a client growth strategy session. It's really good to see, as I say, so many faces on the screen. There's some familiar faces there, which is nice to see, and there's some new folks that I don't think um, I've met before anyway. So for the benefit of the new folks, my name is Ewan San. Um, Current world record holder for cracking the same joke in numerous Zoom calls over lockdown. I'm part of the team here at the Agency Collective. And for those of you who don't know, the Agency Collective is a community of agency owners, leaders, managers, founders. There's about 700 or so now individuals that make up the Agency Collective, and that's across about 400 or so agencies. And we've got everything from design agencies right the way through to UX, PR agencies, all the way through to language translation services, and pretty much everything in between. And it's a really lovely bunch of humans that make up the AC. What binds us all together is the support and the camaraderie that manifests right the way throughout the community. So it's a real privilege, certainly for me, and I get a chance to be part of it. I've got to say a big thank you to Mailchimp and Co, who are partners, who've helped us deliver this content. They've been a real joy to work with over the last year or so. So they offer a really brilliant service to agencies looking to build and grow their businesses, not just in terms of emails, but some of the favorite perks are on the screen that you can see now. But I've had a chance to work with the team over at Mailchimp for the last few months, and they've just been such a joy to work with. They really get it. They know what it's like to run an agency, to be at the coalface. A lot of that is because of their partners. We've worked with Emily Ryan, who's an AC member, Mary Ann Pfeiffer, Paige Slaughter, Glenn Edley, who's based down in New Zealand. All of them are agency owners. All of them are Mailchimp partners, part of the Mailchimp Co scheme, and all of them, they're super switched on. They all run fab little agencies, and all of them are absolutely lovely. So if you get a chance to, if you're interested to, please have a look at the link here, mailchimp.com/and-co, and you'll be in great company. It was actually Mailchimp and Co that we've been working with to put together a global benchmark report. You might have come across or heard of the bench press report they've been running in the UK. So Mailchimp take ownership of the global version of that. So if you want to have a look at that to see how you compare to other agencies around the world, please do so. There's a link is just there. It's wildco.uk/global. And if you're a bit nosy like I am, it's always interesting to see how other agencies are doing. And speaking of being nosy, there's still a chance to do the UK regional survey. That closes tonight, I think it is. So we've produced a national version, and now you've got an opportunity to do a UK regional version. So you can take about 10 minutes or so to do the survey, and then you can compare how your agency is performing versus other agencies in your region. So it's definitely worth a little look. So into the main thing. There's going to be quite a lot of me talking, and then I want to hand over to you guys to do a little bit of discussion internally as well. Quite a lot to cover off, and it's just me tonight as well. So if I keep on getting distracted, it's because I'm letting people into the talk as I go. So what we're going to covering off is I want to talk a little bit about measuring the return that we get off our investment, off our effort, because that's super important. There's a few hygiene points that we need to cover off, namely building trust and demonstrating value to our clients, because without that, we're not getting anywhere. I would like us to share some ideas on how we can do that for our clients. And then we want to get into the actual development of the strategy. Ultimately, what we're trying to do here is to find more opportunities to get growth. So we'll talk a little about how we go about doing that. And then what I'd like to do is, if we've got time at the end, is just for us to commit to some actions, some takeaways, and those things that we can do straight away and when we finish this session. Hope all of that makes sense so far. Oh, and by the way, not only do I have a slightly weird accent, but I also talk quite quickly as well. So if I am going a little bit too quick, just pop your hand up or stick something into the chat, and I can go back over again. So please don't be shy in that regard. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's get straight into it. I want to start with ROI, or for many of us, it'll be a return on effort, or ROA. We're so used to talking about ROI with our clients. The question I've got is, how often do we think about it in our own context? How often do we think about our own return on investment? How often are we measuring what we put into something and what we get back out? So in the context of client growth or any kind of business development activity, what we want to get back is more sales, more revenue. So we need to be really aware of how much each pound, shilling, pence of revenue has cost us in terms of our own investment. If we do that, then we can work out what works really well, do more of that. And we can also see what doesn't work so good and do less of that. So, let's let these guys in. So if we have a look at measuring our ROI, why is it important? Well, if we're trying to reduce our revenue acquisition costs, we need to know how much our revenue is costing us. Okay, so we need to know that we are really efficient in what we're doing. What should we be measuring? Again, pretty straightforward. Time, your time, how much time, effort, and you're putting into these activities, and also any sort of material costs or expenses that you're putting in there as well. So if you're sending cupcakes, or if you're getting train fares, or whatever it is that you're trying to do to develop these clients, you need to take a measure of how much it is. A lot of you will have seen this diagram before as well. If you haven't, please take a picture because it's super helpful. Basic ROI calculation. How much revenue we've got, minus your marketing cost divided by your marketing cost times it by 100, and that gives you your percentage ROI. So let's put a little bit of context to this. If we're spending a bit of our time generating an opportunity with some of our existing clients, let's say it takes 5 days of our time, and our directed day rate is £800 per day. I think that was what the average day rate was according to bench press, but let's say it was around about that. £4,000 it's cost us in terms of time for a 20 grand uplift. So our net result is 16 grand. Divide that by the 4K that it's cost us, we've got 4 times return on our time. Does that make sense so far? The last talk that Peter Chapp did, the founder of Wow Company and the Agency Collective, and the author of the Bench Press reports, he talked a lot about leveraging time. The session was called "What's the Best Use of Our Time?" And put quite simply, if we're doing delivery work, we would have earned £4,000 for £800 a day. But by doing business development work, we've got a 4 times return on our time. So we've been leveraging our time. Our time is working harder for us by doing this type of activity. Now, then you can probably spot already by this formula, the numbers can go south pretty quickly if we don't stack it up. So as an example, if let's say instead of 5 days time, it took 10 days of time, and if instead of 20K uplift, we got a 10K uplift, then it feels all right because we've got a 10 grand deal off the back of it. But if you put that through the calculations, your ROI would have been 10 grand minus 8 grand because of it being 10 days of that time. So we've only had a net of 2K. You divide that by the 8K that we had, and we've only got a 25%, so 0.25 of our time. We would have been better off doing delivery work than spending our time trying to do client development work. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's why we have to be really aware of how we spend our time and what we get back for our time. Okay, so measuring our effort. Benchmark what you do at the moment. Benchmark any new things that you do. And then do what does better. Do what works best for you and best for your agency. Okay, cool, good stuff. So I mentioned hygiene right up top. Obviously, I didn't mean personal hygiene, although that is really important as well. But there are certain things that just have to be, it's a prerequisite of any sort of business development, any sort of client development stuff that you do. You need your client to trust you, and they need to see value in what you do in order to grow that account. If we're missing either of those things, then you're not going to grow it. It's going to be impossible to try and grow your accounts. It's as simple as that. So first, I want to talk about building trust. You can see these are the 2 things that you can do. You can be more reliable. If you can be the expert, you're very much on your way. And I often roll out, whenever I do this talk, an example of being a doctor. My wife is a GP. And it always makes me smile a little bit whenever she talks about her work. But when you go and see a GP as a patient, not as a spouse, obviously, and you chat and you tell them about your problems, they make a couple of recommendations, they write out a prescription for you, you do what they say, you go to the pharmacy, you pick up your meds, and you literally eat the medicine. And most people trust their doctors because they are experts. They know what they're talking about, so you trust them. And being an expert helps you build that trust. So how can we be more reliable? Again, really straightforward. It's not rocket science, but some simple things that you can do. You can hit your deadlines. Yeah, just make sure that you make the targets that you set, and essentially you do what you say you're going to do. Yeah, if you can do that, then you're halfway there. The other part of being an expert is where you get the opportunity is to share your knowledge. Don't give away the crown jewels, obviously, but you need to take the opportunities that you get to share your knowledge with your clients. You want to be able to showcase some of the wins that you've done as well. So if you have other clients in a similar sort of space, by sharing some of those wins, sharing some of those learnings, you build that view that you're an expert in your space. And the last bit here is around advising and educating your clients. I just want to elaborate on that a little bit. I'm sure everybody on the call today has met someone or knows someone that you just love meeting up with. You love spending time with them. I've got a friend of mine who works over at Morgan Stanley. I don't know why I'm pointing over there, by the way, because he's over in London. But anyway, he works in Morgan Stanley. And we used to go to lots of festivals and parties and stuff like that together. And he's just a super bright bloke. We used to call him the confusion master, not because he caused confusion, but because he used to lift it like a fog. He would lift it because he was just so bright. And it always felt like you'd learn something new around him. So I just couldn't wait to spend time with him because it just lifted me up. And imagine now if we could do that in the context of our expertise with our clients. Yeah. So if we can advise and if we can educate, and not in a condescending way, it just helps us take that position as being an expert. Okay. So we talked about building trust. The other bit was getting our clients to see value in what we do. How can we help our clients see the value in what we do? So the very first thing that I want to talk about here is the value is contextual. Okay. So if I was to sell you this glass of water here right now, and I wanted £100 for it, then you probably politely decline, right? Now, if I was going to take you out of your current context, out of the lovely offices that you're in, the nice lounges, or nice offices that you're home offices that you're in right now, and I put you into the Sahara Desert where there's 50-degree heat, how much would you pay for a glass of water then? You'd probably pay quite a bit more. Okay, so it's just understanding that value is contextual. So if we know that, then what we need to work out is what are the contexts that our clients see our value. And thankfully, that bit's pretty easy. Let me just let Andrea in. Here we go. Okay, so it's pretty easy. By the way, just so that you all know, and when I started my company, I also co-founded another company called Box2 Media, mainly due to my obsession with 2x2 matrices. So here's one, first one of the evening. There's a few more to come. So the first thing we need to think about is how do our clients measure value? Is it valuable or is it not? And they will measure it in two ways. One way is objectively. They'll use metrics, numbers, units. The other way, so that's very, very tangible. The other way is you'll measure it subjectively. How things feel. Okay, so it's objectively and they'll have some subjectively, and then we can look at the context of whether or not they look at it in the context of an individual perception or if they take it in a collective perception. Okay, so in this context, in terms of B2B, in terms of agency sales, are we creating value to them as an individual, as a contact, or are we creating value on a company level, on a business level? Yeah. So now we can start filling out the boxes. It's really pretty straightforward. And the first thing is objectively, on an individual level, are we helping them do their job? Yeah, we either help them do their job or we don't. It's very objective. So getting the job done, are we creating value in that context? Yeah. And subjectively, on an individual level, on the contact level, there are entire agencies that are built on the premise that there is value in experience. Yeah. How does it feel to work with us as an agency and as a team? Are we great to work with? Okay, so a real quick question to you. How many people here have, let's take it this way. How many people here have stopped working with a client because they are not great to work with, because they're really difficult to work with? Quick show of hands. Anybody here sacked off a client? Yeah? Good. Okay, conversely, the other way around. How many people here have bought a service or did work with somebody and paid a bit more than perhaps the market rate because they really enjoyed working with them, because they bring pleasure to their lives? Again, a few hands going up there. More hands, even better. Okay, so there's value in that. There's subjective value in terms of how we are to work with. What's the experience like when we work with them? On a company level, objectively, they normally measure things in resources. Yeah, so are we saving them time? Are we saving them money? Are we saving them materials? So unit measures. Are we creating value from a business level? And then subjectively, again, you see how many agencies, how many businesses out there are looking at things like B Corp, who are looking at taking a position of purpose and being purpose driven. Do we create value by aligning with the culture or the values of that business? Okay. So these are the different kind of contexts within which our clients can perceive the value of what we do. And then what we need to do is we need to really drive it home and say, this is how we're valuable to you, because we get the job done for you, because we save you time and resources, and you don't have to spend loads of money on pay as you earn employees, because we can do the jobs for you. Or it might be because we're bloody good fun to work with and we got on really well and achieve brilliant things together. Or it might well be that, we've got a perfect alignment in terms of our culture, in terms of values, in terms of what we see as being important in terms of our values. So these are the kinds of conversations that we should be having with our clients in order to reinforce the fact that we are valuable to them. Okay, so we're going at quite a pace here, which is really, really good. What I'd like to do is, given we've had a little chat about the value and how we can be trusted by our clients. I'm sure all of you have got some anecdotes, you've probably got some stories, you've probably got some tips as well in terms of how you've been able to reinforce the value that you create for your clients and how you're trusted by your clients. So what I'd like to do, I'm just going to put you into roughly pairs. I just want to spend maybe 5 minutes. Yeah, let's say 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes, just to share some ideas, share some tips on how we can show the value of what we do and how we can build trust with your clients. So I'm going to pop you into your meeting rooms now, and if you could share some tips, and then what we'll do is when we come out, I'll pick on some of you, and we'll see if we can get some golden nuggets of advice out. Okay. Hello. Welcome back. Doesn't 5 minutes go really quickly when you're in those breakout rooms? Okay, so it does, doesn't it? It does. Don't worry, you don't need to answer that question. I'm keen to hear. I'm really curious to hear. Were there any golden nuggets of tips that were shared in there around how we can show the value of what we do, and also how we can build trust with our clients? Does anybody want to volunteer anything forward first of all? Or shall I go on, Andrea? What have you got?
What was that? I was going to say that probably understanding the pain of my client and having a full understanding of what their users want might help to build up a value with a relationship with the client.
That's a really good point. So understanding their clients' pain points and understanding, brilliant. Yeah, that's a really good point. So it's just like going beyond just understanding your clients' pain points, but understanding their clients' pain points beyond that as well. Excellent tip. Yeah. Anybody got anything else they'd like to share with the rest of the group that was really useful? In terms of, yeah, go for Claudia.
Thank you. I would always say kind of to the client when we get a new client, what is the one thing in this relationship that is most important to you? And that will vary quite differently among clients. Some clients will say, I need you to reply to my emails quickly. Some clients don't care about that. They have different values. So I think it's about understanding what is important to that client, because it's always so different for each client. And I think if you can then consistently make sure you're meeting that expectation for them, that will then build that trust, because they know that you're delivering on that promise and you understand what's important to them.
Such a good tip. So like straight off the bat, just asking them what's really important to you. How can I make this relationship work really, really well for you? Yeah. And understanding that and making sure that you put that. That's really good. That's really, really super useful. Anybody else want to drop anything in there?
Understand them as people outside of the business context, I think is really important. And that's been quite, a challenge during the pandemic, but also, having a lot of Zoom and Teams calls, you get a bit of an insight into their home environment as well. And that can be, really useful to help build that relationship, which has been incredibly hard to build relationships, purely virtually.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know about you again. Really quick straw poll, but we've I'm sure the same for everyone who's still in business anyway. We've won most of the clients that we're working with today. Sorry, outside of the agency collective, we've won that business without meeting them in person. Without having a face-to-face with them, they've come through virtually. So you're right, you're absolutely right, Raymond. Being able to pick up on little things, and I think also the other thing is it's slightly ironically, given that everything's done digitally, and as we are today, little things like, I'm in my little boy's room and there's this guitar there, there's Legos up on the top and things like this. But it's that we seem to be more human than we ever were, even though we're kind of talking through screens, because we have this little bit of insight that kind of comes through. So you're absolutely right, and being able to connect on a human level is super important, and looking for opportunities to do that again is really key, and getting yourself into the habits of doing that as well on every interaction to try and get more information about your clients and how they work is super important. Cool, good stuff. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. Bear with me. Hopefully this works again. There we go. So we've done our collaboration time. I want to talk about actually getting into the developing a client growth strategy now. I'm going to go a little bit Simon Sinek on you, and that is, we want to start with why, and what is the reason. Why do we want to grow our clients? Why all our client accounts? Does anyone want to just chip in? Why are you here today? What do you want to do with growing your accounts? What are we trying to achieve? Feel free to shout. Shall I go? So there's a few things that I think when I talk about growing client accounts. I think we all want a little bit more money, a bit more income, a bit more revenue. Or slightly one level above just generating more revenue, we want it to be stable revenue. We want it to be sustainable. So if we're talking about client growth, that means they've been with us already. We're going to be working with them for a little bit longer. So it means that we've got that element of longevity. We've got a bit of predictability in terms of our revenue. That's super important. And if we can grow our revenue, then the likelihood is we can grow our businesses as well. We might be able to grow our teams. We might be able to look at different territories. But ultimately, all of these things, what we're doing is that we're looking for more opportunities to generate income, more opportunities to generate revenue. So that's why I'm going to take us in terms of this kind of client growth strategy, is how can we generate more opportunities to generate revenue, to generate income. Okay, so before we kick into that, I just want to talk a little bit about big clients and small clients, and which ones are more appropriate for targeting in terms of client growth. There's two things that will improve your likelihood of winning more revenue from existing clients. One of them is having more teams to sell to. So that's typically linked to company size. And the other one is if they've got more budget, so if they've got more projects to work around. So if there's more projects or there's more budget to win, then you've got a better chance of actually winning stuff. The chances are that if your client is kind of smaller, if you like, then these factors are going to be smaller as well. And so thinking back to our ROI equation, when we're talking about where to play, where to win, the fewer teams or the fewer projects or smaller budgets that your client has, it means that your odds are going to be longer, that you're going to get a decent uplift versus your effort. So do have a think about which accounts you're going to try and grow. And typically where you'll win quicker or where you're more likely to win are going to be the ones that have got more teams for you to engage with, or the ones that have got slightly bigger budgets or more projects to get involved with. Okay, so we could talk a little bit more about finding these opportunities. Now, broadly speaking, you can grow accounts in three ways. Okay, one of them is selling more of the same services. Second one is selling new services. And the third one is just approaching new teams or winning new projects within the existing clients. So if we can grow our accounts by these three routes, and what we need to think about next is how we go about doing it and how can we get more opportunities. And so stand by the way, here's another 2x2 matrix. This is a structure that I'd like to share with you, which I found really useful over the years. Okay, selling existing services to the same teams is one dimension that we could look at. We can sell new services to the same teams. So that's one way of growing. So we're growing kind of in line with the services or the offering that we have our portfolio. We can grow sideways. So that's selling existing services that we have, but to new teams within our client organizations. And then the fourth box, which is the top right, is probably the trickiest one of all. And that's why we're selling new products or new services to brand new teams. Okay. Now, then the approach that we can take if we're looking at these different dimensions of growth, is if we're selling existing services to the same teams, then one strategy that we can take is around our pricing. Again, any disciples of Blair Enns that we got on the call today will know that pricing is an incredible lever to profitability. So we know how powerful pricing can be. We did a talk with a fellow called Ben Johnson a while ago from Happy Pricing. And you have a look at his website, happypricing.co, I think it is, and have a look at the pricing manifesto. There's lots of talk in there about how we can increase our prices. So one way of growing our client accounts is by selling the same thing that we do to our clients, but charging a little bit more for it, which is pretty straightforward. If we're selling new services to the same teams, then what we need to achieve here is we need to line up the new services that we offer with what they need. And so we need to help them solve their challenges. And in order to do that, we need to get strategic alignment. So we need to know what they're doing and what things they're involved with in order to sell some of the new services that we offer to them. Okay. And we'll go out to the side, selling the stuff that we've done already for the client, but to new teams within the client. Then what we need to do is we need to start looking at leaning on our existing contacts within that organization for internal referrals. We need to be able to show the proof of what we've done and how we do it. And this is what we use to leverage our approach to the new teams with the existing services that we do. And then the last one is, and I'll put it in red because this one's the hardest bit to do. It's a higher risk strategy here. And that's around selling new services to new teams. So we need to get that strategic alignment, and we also need to build trust. So it's a much longer play in order to go for that kind of diagonal jump. If that makes any sense to you guys? Yeah. So the two routes that I would say to go for are the ones where we either selling our track record of delivery on the services that we do to other teams within the organization, or we're leveraging our relationship to sell new services to the existing team that we work with. So there are two kind of clear routes I recommend you go for when you're looking to expand your client growth. So if we are going to do offering new services to our clients, what can we do? What we need is visibility of what their plans are. And we need to know what their challenges are likely to be if they're going to execute on those plans. And the challenges that we want, or the challenges we want to identify, are the ones that we can help fix, the ones that we can help solve, the ones that our products and our services will help them overcome. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can go about finding out, what does their strategic view look like, and what their challenges could be. And so there's three approaches really, and they're all quite similar in terms of the tactics, and that is to get an immediate view of what their landscape looks like, what their strategic approach looks like, have a look at their midterm view, and then have a look at their long-term view and what's happening, and then finding out what their challenges might be. And so one way that you can do that is by conducting strategic reviews with your clients. So this is the key point here, is that you're not trying to sell to them at this stage. You're not trying to book some time with them to tell them about the new products or new services that you bring online. But this is a conversation about where their business is going, where the business is at now and where the business is going. And on this diagram, I put on there, 3, 6, 12 months. You can adjust these timings for longer timings, longer intervals or shorter intervals, but it's just quite a nice framework for you to have your conversation around, because it's quite easy to talk about, what's happening right now. And you can apply the same model into something like a product roadmap. Yeah. So if you're talking to your clients about, what's the new features that are coming through on there, if it's a tech product, for example, what's the new features that are coming through? Talking about the here and now is much easier to talk about because right in front of them. It's things that are happening every day, right in front of them, right around them, what kind of pressures the teams are facing. But that makes the conversation progress to the next stage, i.e. what's happening in the product pipeline, what's happening in the development pipeline. That becomes much more natural. So for product roadmaps, you can find out what features might be on the release schedule that's coming down the line. And then that means that your agency is in a better position to help them make that release a success. So it's all about having these conversations to work out what's coming further down the line, and then framing in a now, soon, kind of next kind of framework, or 3, 6, 12 framework works really, really well. And the last context that you can use this model in, which helps quite a lot, is doing competitor or market analysis. Yeah. And so you can apply the same method in looking at competitor reviews, or maybe doing some market analysis for your client. And again, you put this natural order of discussions in, and it might be that you do it in a meeting, it might be that you do it in a workshop, however you're inclined to do it, or however your client is inclined to do it. But where we want to get to is we want to get to that chunky question of, what does it look like in 12 months' time? What does the future look like for you? And you want to get them talking about that long term, because we want them to kind of visualize and think about the long term, but we want them to do so with your agency in the middle of it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if we're having these conversations about what does the future look like, what does the next 12 months look like, and you are there representing your agency, then you are going to be part of those plans, or you can be more likely to be part of those plans. So that's just something that you can take away and apply into your businesses in terms of how you can start having some of these longer term conversations. I wanted to talk a little bit about challenges. And I mentioned challenges a minute ago because understanding your client's challenges, it's like having the keys to the castle. But it's one of those things which is really difficult to talk about. If you think about, you talk to your clients about, what their needs are, and they can come up with a massive list of needs. I need, this, that, the other. I need more staff. I need more revenue, whatever it might be. But getting somebody to open up about what their challenges are is quite a bit more tricky. I guess it's a whole thing about being vulnerable. It's a harder conversation to have. And let me give you one example. One of my clients from way back when, he said that he needs more leads. So his need was more leads for his business. And we had a conversation. I use this model which I'm about to talk to you right now about. It turns out it wasn't leads. He was getting plenty of leads. His challenge was converting those leads into opportunities. And it was about having this conversation, trying to unearth what the challenge was, rather than what their need is or what their problem is. And this is a model that I've used and it's really, really well. So you start off with that conversation about where are they now, a little bit like that 3, 6, 12 approach. This is the 3 months. So where are you right now? Tell us about where you are right now. And then we start talking a little bit about where do you want to be in the future. So what does the future look like? What does good look like? What's really exciting? Where are you trying to get your business? Where are you trying to get your team? What do the numbers look like? So we start talking about things in that future context. The next part of the conversation then, so we know where they are now, we know where they want to try and get to. We start talking to them about what is their approach. What's your current plan then? Okay, how are you going to get from 5 members of staff to 25 members of staff? How are you going to go from 800 grand revenue to 5 million revenue in 5 years? Talk me through it. What are you going to do? Yeah. Then the next question that you ask them, now that you can set it up, is you can talk about what do you think the challenges are going to be then? That plan sounds amazing, the way that you just told me about it. Where do you think is going to be the tricky bits? Where are the challenges? Where are the risks? If you take this approach, I'd say like 9 out of 10 times that you have this conversation with clients where you talk about where they are now, where they want to be. So it's now, future, approach, challenge. It's that setup of the conversation that you can have to unearth what their challenges are. And that's where, if you know what their challenges are, if you know what their timeframes look like, that's when you can start building some strategic alignment with the products and services that you offer. Does all that make sense so far? Yeah, cool, good stuff. Okay, so offering new services then. So key thing is have a look at opportunities to run some client strategy sessions. That's a really good way of getting an idea of what kind of services, what kind of products that you could offer them aligned with what they need or indeed what their challenges are. Looking at product or business roadmaps is another way of getting some ideas in terms of future planning. And then competitor reviews, which is a really nice one. We tend not to say no to these types of things as well. And again, these are the key things to emphasize with this, is we want to talk about their challenges. And we need to do it in such a way that doesn't come across as us trying to sell to them. Does that make sense? And so what we're trying to do here is we're trying to gather information, we're trying to get insights, we're trying to know what their challenges are. And it doesn't work if we kind of set the tone as we want to sell you more stuff. That is ultimately where we'll get to. But in order for us to get there effectively, get there efficiently, and increase our chances of winning that revenue, we need to take the stepping stones first of all. Cool. Okay. We are going at quite a pace here. I'm just looking at the clock and I'm thinking, wow, we're going really quickly. So I want to talk a little bit now about finding new teams to engage with within existing clients. I don't want to spend too much of my time talking on here, because I think it's always good to share some tips as well. In fact, let's just go straight into it. I'm just going to stop screen sharing and go into the big screen. What I'd like to do is just for us to have a bit of discussion now, just in terms of how can we identify or find more ways to engage with different teams within our clients. Has anybody done anything or has tried anything that has worked quite well in terms of unearthing new opportunities or new teams to work within their existing clients? Anybody want to share anything?
I haven't. Hi.
Hi, Donna.
Hello. I haven't. It's not really with regard to new teams, because I'm freelance, so I just work by myself, and most of the small businesses that I work with are just independents as well, so they don't have teams. But what I'm thinking of doing, just to generate income, is that the more functionality that Mailchimp brings through to the platform, websites, chats and everything, I'm thinking about going back to my existing clients and offering training sessions on the new functionality within Mailchimp, because they're really moving apace now, and I'm thinking you can just continually circle back to your clients and offer them and upskilling themselves to be able to run their own accounts.
Nice. Yeah, that was a great shout. Anybody else got any other tips in terms of engaging with new teams or other contacts within your client base? I mean, strictly speaking, the session's about single client growth, but very much, Donna, your point still stands. You know, taking that kind of education route is a really good door opener. Anybody else got any other tips that they would share in terms of opening and looking at other teams that they can engage with within an organization? Go for it, Chetan.
Yeah. See, normally when I talk to any of my new clients, I normally talk about the journey that they are into right now, like why they have come to me, what's the pain point that they have, and kind of stuff. And I also offer them what different things I can do for them apart from what they're looking right now. So holistically speaking, I introduce myself as a full package, that what best I can do and what all I can do. So that gives them a kind of impression that this is a whole bouquet of things that can be offered. And I try to continue that discussion during the course of the contract also, so that I may get a chance to talk about other things that this client may come up, maybe as a kind of referral or maybe as a kind of another department within the same client company. So that way, it's a continuous process of exploring the opportunities within the same contract, and it may come. We got to keep on exposing ourselves, creating new impressions about the services that we continue to deliver. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, sounds really good. That sounds really good. And can I just have a quick show of hands? How many people here work with larger organizations or organizations with kind of multiple teams within? You do. Philippe, I just want to pick on you a little bit. Could you give us an example of perhaps one of the types of clients that you work with at Waxter, please?
Our larger clients is kind of in two categories. Some of them are agencies that have got multiple creative teams and different silos as well. So they do events and marketing and all those type of things. I'm kind of niched into a specific area in that agency where where it's their ideation and and they 3D development segment and their video production. So kind of that group. And then we've got some clients like a construction company that's huge. And again, I'm kind of just focused on the internal communication department of that company, and I not really have a clue of where else to kind of branch out within that company or how to do that.
Sure. Okay. No, that sounds really good. Can I go to you, Kevin McDermott? You mentioned you've got a few big clients as well. What kind of clients do do you work with, and have you taken any approaches to try and look at other teams that you could engage with within your client?
Yeah, I mean, it's not particularly sophisticated, but most of the time it's just asking straight up, is there anyone else in the organisation you can put us in touch with or recommend us to? I mean, an example would be we're fortunate enough to work with the RHS, and they're a big old beast, but we've got gardens, we've got shows, they have an education and qualifications arm, so across membership. So it's just trying to, I guess, not be too backward about coming forward and sort of asking at the opportune time, probably when you've just had a good success with one particular client, and seeing if there's any way they can put the name forward for others in the same place. I guess with the reassurance that the quality of work you're doing for them won't suffer. But obviously, if you're doing a good job for them, hopefully they'll feel comfortable recommending you to others.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And my kind of tuppence worth into the question. So one of the bigger clients I've worked with is Deloitte, and obviously they're absolutely massive, and it comes with their own challenges as well. Let's not beat about the bush. When you work with these really big companies, they do come with their own challenges. But one of the strategies that we found worked really, really well for us, when we were kind of looking for different teams to explore within these larger kind of corporates, if you are working with corporates, is to, and I think Philippe, you kind of touched on it briefly as well, is to look for these almost kind of like hubs within the corporate. So if you look for like an internal, so one of our big gateways within Deloitte was working with their internal marketing team. So they had like an internal team that looked after a lot of the marketing efforts for different parts of Deloitte. So for tax, for audit, for risk assurance and stuff like that. They all came back through to a central pot. So it was identifying where that central hub was and making your kind of inroads in there. That was very, very helpful. So looking at the structure of your clients, looking at the structure of their business, and looking for the connections within it. So looking for the hubs inside of your client is really key. So typically, you'll find that there'll be some sort of centralized marketing. There's probably going to be some sort of centralized IT or technology infrastructure. And the other one is there's normally a centralized finance structure as well. So these are typically the conduits that you're able to explore different ways into a larger organization, and getting to know some of these teams and getting to know some of the individuals in the teams who could connect you on to other people. Philippe, you mentioned that you work with some agencies. Again, that's a really lucrative space to work around, because if they've got multiple clients, then they'll normally have an account manager and account management team. So there's again ways that you can go one to many, and that's basically what we're trying to look for within these kind of within these larger organizations, is ways that we can explore a one to many kind of outreach within these organizations. The other part, which doesn't happen as often, but it's definitely worth doing within your clients, is having a look, or if you can, put together an organogram. Does anybody remember organograms? Have you remember those? Like org charts. They might not have one internally, but it is worth mapping out an org chart for your clients, so you can start seeing the makeup and the construction of some of the organizations of your clients, because then you can see, is there a way that you can connect through to get through to different teams. So for example, if you work with a marketing person, or maybe it's a social media person, or it might be somebody who looks after the emails, they may well look after emails for another part of the business that you can then get a referral into. So looking for internal referrals. So if you can create your own kind of org charts, that really does help as well. I'm just going to start sharing again, and then we can start making our way through. Okay, so finding new teams to engage, and things that you can do. When we start looking, and I think, Kevin, you touched on this briefly, actually, when we talked about referrals or internal referrals, we need to make sure that we make it really easy for the referral to move on. So I don't know if you guys have done it before. I definitely have fallen into the trap of just asking them, oh, is there anybody else that you can refer me on to? And what that does is that it leaves them to do a lot of the work for you, and they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Yeah. Whereas if you can make it really easy for them, so if you can say, could you put me through to, perhaps your counterpart on this particular project? and I would love to have a conversation with them about this. And you just make it really easy. So you're basically taking as much of the work off the referral as you can, and you're being as specific as you can. And it might even go as far as, could you forward this email on? Just make that referral as easy as you can, so that you're just not asking your contact to do as much work as, let's say, can you think of anyone that I could work with? Because they're having to do a lot of thinking, a lot of lifting for you. Whereas if you take a lot of the work out, they're more likely to do it for you. The other thing that you can do is, I've mentioned org charts or organograms. If you love it or hate it, LinkedIn is super helpful here, because you can go into LinkedIn and look at the organization, and you can see who else works there. And depending on the privacy settings, you can then see if there are useful contacts or useful people within that organization that your contact is already connected to. So definitely have a look at LinkedIn in terms of building out internal referrals. And the last thing that I would definitely put in there as well is set up a Google News alert for the organization. Anybody done this before? It's definitely, again, you're nodding your head there. Your names aren't coming up anymore. Let me just see. Bear with me one moment. Rob Stevens, of course. Rob Stevens, you're nodding your head there. How do you use Google News alerts?
So we use Google News alerts, but also we have all of our clients through Company's House, because you can actually get a referral or an alert. So you'd be amazed at kind of the information that comes up on the company annual reports. So there's some golden nuggets in there where the directors will normally talk about what they're going to achieve, what market's going to move into, like whether or not they're going to work with external agencies or not. And it's absolute dynamite. Yes, it can be a bit dry, but like within there's nearly always some absolute nuggets of kind of information. And obviously this has come straight usually from like the chief exec or the chairman or something like that. So it's a good source of information. But the news alerts are great as well, because if there's any kind of changes or things that are happening that are significant, it's exciting for them, I guess. They've worked really hard to get this stuff out. So, just giving them some kudos and saying, well done, that's really cool. How's that going to impact? Do you need any support with that? It's just showing that you actually care and are interested in their business. I think that kind of sets you apart.
Definitely. Really good tip there. Really, really good tip there, Rob. I never thought of doing that. I'd never actually thought of doing it. So I do know what it means. So if you go onto Company's House, there's just companieshouse.gov.uk, I think it is. You can do a search, can't you? Yeah. I didn't realize you could set up notifications, but you can certainly do searches on your target accounts or on your clients. And depending on the size of their turnover, they either have to do, if they're under threshold, they can do abridged accounts, so it's just really short accounts. But I think if the threshold is 8 million, if they're over a certain turnover size, they have to do full accounts. And on the full accounts, they'll also include a statement. If we're on the same lines here, Rob. Yeah, and that's, as you say, and it'll normally come from the chairman, sometimes it comes from the CFO as well, where they will basically talk about the financial performance as is, and they'll also talk about what's coming up, right?
Yeah, exactly that. And, you'll get to see what kind of rhythm they're working in with regards to their planning, like whether they're on a 3-year cycle or a 5-year cycle. So if you're looking to kind of like integrate yourself into their kind of financial cycle, then it's important that you understand kind of when the budgets are coming up and what's going to be available. But, you'll be amazed. Like I said, one of the things that we've done with a business is kind of we've taken that information, we've plugged it into their kind of like sales forecast. We've then put the metrics that we already know and said, right, if we were doing these activities for you with the metrics we're already getting elsewhere, we could essentially generate this extra revenue for you with this investment to get that return. And we landed one of our biggest increases in revenues by doing that. And like when we rocked up to speak to the owners, they were literally blown away. They couldn't believe that we'd done that work. And they were like, where the hell have you got the information from? It's like, well, it's Company's House. It's public information. You guys, it's your report. We just went and read it. Like, who else does that? Like, no one. I don't know why I've told you guys this, actually, because it's one of my best tips for winning business. So, shot myself in the foot here. I should be charging you lot for this.
Yeah, Rob. Well, Rob, it's an absolutely fabulous tip. It was really, really good tip. Thank you very much for sharing that with us.
I think I would need 250 quid off everyone for that one. So
that's a steal.
Invoices out.
That's a steal. Listen, thank you so much, Rob. That was, again, really, really fabulous tip. Thank you very much indeed, and really, really good to know. The only bit that I would kind of append to that as well, which again is really, really interesting, is when you start looking at these companies' house reports and we start looking at the full accounts, you can also see what kind of rate of increase their turnover has looked like. So you can pull out the previous year's reports, and on the report, the current report, there'll be a comparison to last year. But you can also have a look at what employee size they're at as well, so you can see what kind of rate of growth they're going for. And again, we talked a little bit about having these conversations, about having these strategic conversations. Where are you going with the business? Where is it now? Then this again adds more fuel to the fire. So you've gone from 12 employees to 24 employees since last year. I can see from your company's house report. What's happening there then? How's that gone for you? So it just gives you more, I guess it's more fuel to the fire, really, in terms of them having these kind of strategic conversations with your clients. Great stuff. Okay, I'm not quite sure where that hour has gone, folks, but that's the hour up. The last bit that I had on my slides was really, we probably don't have time to do it now, but what I'd really love you to do is have a think about what can you do to create more opportunities with your clients, and not just think about it. This I'm stealing totally from Pete Tapia, but we spend so much of our time just thinking of these things, just having ideas pop into our heads and think, yeah, that sounds really good. But we spend so little of our time externalizing it. We don't actually take it out from our heads and put it down somewhere and commit to it. So what I'd like everybody to do off the back of this call is to, take a Post-it note and write down just one action that you want to take away from this session today that you'd like to try and apply, that you'd like to take into your business, and stick it onto your screen, and keep it up there, and see if you can actually get through and complete it. When I first bought a house with my wife a few years ago in Bristol, it was the first house that we bought, and we had the mortgage £243,000 for it. And I just remember being blown away that I owe nearly £250,000 to somebody right now. So I stuck it on a Post-it note on the corner of my screen. Whenever I was feeling like, oh, I don't want to make this call, I just look at that and think, I'm going to do it. So if we can do that, if we can just take that little bit out, stick it in the corner of your screen and take that action, that would be absolutely lovely. And it would make me really happy if everybody in this call can take away and have action something away from what you've gained. So that's it. Thank you ever so much, everybody, for taking part. Really appreciate it. If you do have time to, then please do have a look at that survey for the regional reports. If you've done it already, then thank you very much. Other than that, thank you all for coming along and listening to me witter on.